everybody, and welcome to the Painted Porch. We're so glad you're with us. I'm joined by Mr. Rob Hunter and Ms. Amy Yakowski.
Hello.
And this is our weekly book club for a handbook for new Stoics. And if you've been following along, which I hope you have been, and if you haven't been, you should join us. We are working on week 16. So that is page 103 in your readers. And this week, the title is Contemplate Death and How to Live. And this was actually a very interesting chapter this week. You might say it was a little heavy, but let's kind of just dive in here. So the premise is that everyone knows that they're going to die someday. And many Stoics, especially Seneca, believe that the fear of death is most likely the root of many of our fears. And this absolutely makes sense. I think that's why we're so obsessed with health and beauty, is because we feel like that's delaying the inevitable, which is death. And unless you're a vampire, you're immortal and you are going to die someday. And so they talk about how the Stoics want you to focus on, they look at death not as a negative, they actually look at it as an indifferent, which kind of blew my mind, I'm going to be honest. I don't know how death can be an indifferent, but stay with me here. So they want you to focus more on the quality of life versus the quantity. Mm-hmm. So instead of thinking of, oh, I'm going to get at least 75 years of age before I die, and then after 75, then I'm comfortable to die. Nobody knows how long they have. So they kind of take this approach of, instead of thinking that there is a time frame, which there isn't, is focusing on the present, focusing on the now, and the best quality of both your life and your character that you can possibly do with your circumstance. And it all comes back to our good friend, the dichotomy of control. Mm-hmm. So what is under your control? The past, it's already gone, not a part of your control. How many days or years you have left alive in this body, not in your control. The only thing you ultimately have control over is yourself in this present moment. So what they're trying to get us to do is they're trying to get us to become comfortable with letting go of a fear of death, letting it just sort of be something that is not in your control, living a good life. You cannot control how long your life will be, and everything happens when it happens. Death is a natural and inevitable process. What counts is what we do before that moment arrives. And they talk about death is truly just the ultimate test of your character. So this is kind of what they're giving us to chew on here. What they want us to do is they want us to rehearse our Stoic thinking around the fear of death. So they want you to first pick a time of day, every day of the week, that you're going to practice the exercise. I said after my son goes to bed, because that's usually the quietest time in my house. Did you guys set a specific time when you were going to do the exercise?
I usually do these things in the evening, so I set it for the evening. I just do it, right before bed is when I sit down and I do my reflection for the day, and this would be part of it.
See, I like to do the thinking process in the morning because it sets the day up. So if you think about, okay, so it gives you this little Seneca's advice. No one can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it or believes that a long life is a great blessing. If you think about that in the morning, you're going to live your day a little bit differently.
You know what? That's a great point, because, I'll talk about that more in a minute. But that's a great point, because we often can do it at night, go to bed, wake up in the morning, reset, do the same thing, go to bed, wake up in the morning, reset. Sometimes you forget by the time the morning comes around what you said you wanted to do for the next day.
That's true. So when it came to the actual exercise of the week, they suggested free form writing, but they gave us several prompts to work with. And I'm just going to read some of these out of the book. So, and I underline all the W's and the H questions. Why do you not have complete control over the length of your life? How does the knowledge that you don't have complete control over how long you live affect how you should live your life now? Why does Seneca claim that thinking too much about longevity leads to an unpeaceful life? And then if you turn the page, 106, how is not fearing death related to the 4 cardinal virtues of Stoicism, which are, if you're following along, practical wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance? I want to hear more on that as you guys talk about your week. And then how does the fear of death and a strong desire for longevity cause you to act unvirtuously in your life? So in other words, how is that fear actually impacting your virtues and what you're doing? How does it affect your peace of mind? If you're constantly worrying about dying, how is that affecting you?
Mhm.
And what would be some benefits of not fearing death, not obsessing? How might you live your life differently? So they gave us a bunch of these prompts to ponder, and I'm going to throw it out there. Tell me what you guys came up with.
So for me, my biggest thing is that I don't have a fear of death. I actually I've always, I think for the most part, taken a very practical approach to death. I think in some ways I do treat it as an indifferent. However, what I've realized is that because I don't fear it, I don't think about it. And because I don't think about it, I don't believe that I'm necessarily always living my life to the level of quality that I should. So it's more along the fact that I know it's going to happen. It's going to happen when it happens. But there's that comma, however, that semicolon, however, what am I doing each day? What am I doing today to make my life the best it can be while I'm here? I too often get very much, stuck in the day-to-day mendacity, and sometimes forget of, that today could in fact be the last day. And it's not necessarily saying today could be your last day, so do whatever the hell you want in that regard, like throw caution to the wind, but it's living your life in accordance with your cardinal virtues. Am I always treating people with the level of respect that they should be given because they could be gone tomorrow or I could be gone tomorrow, right? It's that type of thinking. So that's one thing that I realized on reflection, that my lack of fear in some regards, or my indifference to it, is almost a little too indifferent. I think there needs to be a caveat there of, you can be indifferent to the outcome because, again, that's something you can't control, but how are you stepping up in your life and living your most virtuous self every day and with every interaction?
But you have to define what that means to begin with. What does the virtuous life actually mean to you?
Well, I think it's more, because I think that's a great point, because you could definitely take the realm of, we all have to do things that occasionally that we would rather not do, right? Laundry, dishes, cooking, cleaning, whatever.
All chores essentially in this household.
However, you can see where I'm going with this one. However, for me, some would say you can look at those things and say, I have this beautiful home. I get to clean this house. I get to wash these dishes because I was able to make food and have food to eat, right? There's a way to look at that. But for me, it's more just how do I interact with and treat others? I think that's my big thing. Is I'm not being disrespectful, but am I always treating them with the level of kindness, I think, and compassion that I would like to, knowing that they or I could be gone shortly thereafter. So for me, it's more about the how am I acting?
Well, because in a sense, if you think about death as inevitable, you can go one of two ways. You can actually act virtuously and you can treat others kindly, or you can cheat, lie, and steal, thinking there's no consequence anyways, and I may die tomorrow, so if I want a Lamborghini, I should go steal one or whatever. Right. So that's the idea of the Stoicism, is to know that's not what you do, because that Lamborghini is not yours and you'd be depriving someone else of their Lamborghini. Mm-hmm. So I thought about it in terms of time, really, in that since you don't know how much time you have left, what are you doing with the time you do actually have? And that time being this moment. So in a sense, the present moment is all you have. Like you said, Sarah, the past is already gone. What are you hanging on to it for? The future is the future. It's the now that actually matters. So if you want to run everything through the now filter, what are you doing in this now? And that could be, are you treating people well? Are you treating people with compassion, with love, regardless of their circumstances? Or are you just letting the moment go by that turns into another moment that goes by, then all of a sudden your entire day, week, month, year is gone?
Right. It's the lather, rinse, repeat.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's basically using death as a virtuous recalibrator, if you will.
Yeah. Or, you know, you could also just say too, like putting off, what are you putting off your happiness for?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of the things I always think about is the story about, you know, the old woman who saved a very expensive bottle of perfume on her dresser because she was saving it for a special occasion. And while she was waiting for special occasion, perfectly average days went by. And then a special occasion came and she went to put the perfume on and it had spoiled because it had, you know, it had just gone rancid. And so you could say, like, that bottle of perfume is, you don't know if you're going to have just wear the damn perfume, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that there's, and I wrote down, you know, about no regrets, live in the present with no regrets. And, you know, it's still within your range of what your virtues are. And it's still within the range of what you have control over. But knowing that from moment to moment, you know, as soon as you've taken the next breath, that last one is done.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you're moving on. And from the millions of factors that are out of your control, you just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about this whole idea of letting go of the idea that you know how much time you have?
Good.
It's kind of counter the programming we get, because everybody always tells you wants you to live a nice, long, healthy life. So it's you have to undo basically all of the things that you've heard. And yes, okay, maybe it is a wish to live a certain amount of time. But what if it doesn't? What if you have a week left? What are you going to do in that week? And if you lived like that all the time, if you had a week left, a day left, a minute left, you would probably appreciate life. Whereas if you think, I'm going to live to be 90, I'm 42 at the moment, so that means I'm like, oh, I got plenty of time left. What if I don't?
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, I give myself, 48 years to complete life. What if I have 8? What if I have 2? And I want a complete life.
Right.
Why am I waiting to 48? Because if I complete life over this today, if I live the best day possible, I'm like, okay, cool. And then I can do it again tomorrow. And it's gonna further whatever time I have left. It's gonna be more meaningful, whether it is 48 years or whether it's 8 or 5 or 2.
Yeah.
That
And
was
I
my
think
sort of
exactly what the Stoics are
recalibrating.
get us to say. They're not trying to be morbid. They're not trying to get you to, you know, plan your own funeral. It's more about accepting yet another thing that is not within your control,
Mm-hmm.
and embracing what is within your control. It's just another exercise of that. And this book, man, did they take us through our paces when it comes to the dichotomy of control exercises. They're just going to bang us over the head
Mm-hmm.
multiple times until we get it in there. And this is a very strong way of doing that. And I think when I was reading how Seneca, believed the fear of death is the root of many of our fears, I think that this really gets straight to the point, because the death is, aside from what your theology tells you, the death is that's the end of this life as you know it. So there's a finality to it, and there's like did I complete my goal? And it gets you to really look at, like, what really is your goal?
Mm-hmm.
What really is your mission? And maybe pinning a time frame to it is not going to serve you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe just pinning your goal on a present moment type of a situation, and that quality of life over quantity could
Right.
help serve you in your journey.
100%. Well put.
So the question is, in our weekly review, did it become easier with practice as the week went on? Did this get easier to grasp? Amy.
Yes and no. I'm going to say a little of both. Yes, I think from a conceptual, no from an execution. Yeah. I think the struggle, and I'm sure we're going to get into this more later, because obviously they always build on whatever they introduce, is thinking about how to apply this beyond your own self. You know, because this actually came about right at the time where Rob's mother had her dog. She had to put her dog down, and so that was a very emotional thing. And so it was interesting. It was actually very well timed that this week that we were going through this, I was trying to look up, you know, how do you express sympathy as a practicing Stoic, because of the fact that you view death as an inevitable. It's everybody has it. You can't escape it. It happens when it happens. To use something that we learned several weeks ago, what is its nature? Its nature, all of us, our nature is to die at some point. So it's like, how do you meet people where they are and have that compassion for what they might be going through, but at the same time, knowing that, well, it's what it's meant to do. You know,
So in
it's
other
going
words,
to happen.
You have to, I think for most people, if I were to interject with Amy,
Yeah.
Amy has already long accepted this principle. So for her, it's
you not
coming.
be a cold bitch.
Yeah, well, essentially, yes. How do you add sympathy to it for the other people that are involved in it?
Yeah.
Versus, I think you and me, Sierra, are probably the opposite in thinking about, wow, what if tomorrow was the last day, or today's the last day, or whatever the case may be? How would I live it?
This hour.
Yeah. And you have that, obviously, I think we most have that hurdle because we don't expect tomorrow to be the last day.
Yeah.
But I thought what I liked about where we're at is the 15 subsequent lessons kind of prepare you in a way for this. So you knew that at some point, the way that they were leading us, we're going to have to face our own mortality and logically deal with it in our own heads. And I think that leading up to this point, I was much more willing to accept the fact, yeah, at some point I'm going to die. At some point, Amy will pass away.
Yeah.
As much as we all want Amy to live forever.
No, you don't. Careful what you wish for.
So what about you, Sierra? Same question. That was a great question.
I did. You know, I think that I have an additional viewpoint, as I think that when you become a parent, I think your own mortality takes on a different shade because there's somebody that's in your care. I mean, yes, your spouse, your partner is always within your care and your heart. But when you have a child who's still a child, you very much think about how that person is in your care and in your absence, what that means. Basically, the unfinished business or things that you wouldn't be around for. And, you know, I think that what I go back to is my purpose as a parent is to prepare my child to function completely without me. So if I continue working towards that mission and every day preparing him better and better to function without me. Now, he's 5 years old, so I realize there's still some things he's got to learn before he can, you know, be off in the world on his own. But as I look at my mission in life, is that my end goal as a parent, as his parent, is to prepare him completely to not need me, to basically to make myself completely obsolete. So whenever my end comes, and I'm not in this physical body anymore, I have just to accept the fact that I've reached that point in my journey, in my job, in hopefully preparing him the best that I can. And that I've lived that moment with no regrets and no turning back. So it did get easier. I think this exercise is hard for anybody. You know, Rob, even like you said, thinking about one day my wife will die. And then you wonder, like, who's going to die first? And there's that whole can of worms. But none of it is within any of our control. So it's getting us to just kind of bring it down a notch and say, live for today.
Mm-hmm. Live for today, but live virtuously for today.
Live virtuously. Don't steal the Lamborghini.
Steal the Lamborghini.
Yeah. Don't steal the Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Don't be like, I'm going to quit my job and travel around the world. And then you're like, crap, now how am I going to feed my family? You know?
Yeah.
I'm just going to eat Skittles. I'm just going to eat Skittles alone, like it's my last day. And then
Yeah.
when you poop rainbows, you're regretting your decision.
Exactly.
So, well, great work, everybody. I know this was a tough week, but fantastic. So join us next week for week 17, which is meditate on others' virtues. And if you haven't joined us already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel that's all about Handbook for New Stoics. Make sure you're following our page. Make sure you reach out to us and let us know what you think. What were your takeaways for this week? So thank you so much for joining us on the porch.
See you next time.